The Huns, a nomadic people from the heart of the Eurasian steppes, feared by empires, warriors without borders. Their origins are shrouded in mystery, but their legacy is etched in history as the terror that shook the Roman Empire. The true origin of the Huns is a topic of debate among historians. Some believe they descended from the Xiongnu, a powerful confederation of nomadic tribes that threatened China during the Han dynasty. Others suggest they were a distinct group from the Central Asian steppes, migrating westward for better pastures and opportunities to raid settled societies. Regardless of their precise origins, by the 4th century AD, the Huns were living a nomadic lifestyle, relying on horses for transportation, hunting, and war. They were masters of mounted archery, a skill that made them deadly on the battlefield. Their warriors could ride for days on end, striking swiftly and disappearing just as quickly. The first major appearance of the Huns in European history occurred around 370 AD, when they began to move westward from the Eurasian steppes into the region north of the Black Sea. Their arrival set off a chain reaction that would eventually lead to the collapse of the Western Roman Empire. Amidst this growing Hunnic power, a new leader would rise, one who would take the Huns to the pinnacle of their influence and leave an indelible mark on history. This man was Attila, the most feared warrior of his time. Born into the ruling elite of the Huns around 406 AD, Attila was destined for greatness from an early age. His family was part of the noble class that had risen to power during the early years of Hunnic expansion. His father, Munzuk, was a respected Hunnic chieftain, a warrior leader who played a key role in the early raids that helped solidify Hunnic dominance over rival tribes. Attila grew up in a world of constant warfare and fierce tribal loyalty. From a young age, he and his brother Bleda had trained in the skills essential for a Hunnic warrior: horse riding, archery, and leadership. By the time he was a teenager, Attila had been fighting alongside older warriors, learning not just the tactics of war, but also the political intricacies of Hunnic alliances and rivalries. Attila's family connections also played a key role in shaping his future. His uncle Rugila was the powerful king of the Huns during the early 5th century, consolidating Hunnic control over vast territories. His uncle Rugila died in 434 AD. The leadership of the Huns passed to Attila and his brother Bleda. The two brothers ruled together, continuing the Hunnic tradition of fierce raids and demanding tribute from the Eastern Roman Empire. In 435 AD, not long after Attila and Bleda assumed power, the Eastern Roman Empire sought to stabilize its relationship with the Huns through diplomacy. The result was the Treaty of Margus, a peace agreement that would mark the beginning of Attila's complex relationship with Rome. The Treaty of Margus was negotiated between the Roman Emperor Theodosius II and the Huns. It promised peace between the two sides and agreed to double the payment of gold to the Huns, raising it to 700 pounds of gold per year. In return, the Huns pledged not to launch attacks on Rome, refrain from forming alliances or treaties with Rome's enemies, and to protect the Danube frontier along with the provinces of the Roman Empire. After the Treaty of Margus, the Huns shifted their focus eastward and launched a campaign against the Sassanid Empire. However, they were defeated in Armenia by the Sassanid forces, forcing them to abandon their invasion. With their eastern ambitions thwarted, the Huns turned their attention back to Europe. It wasn't long before tensions with the Roman Empire resurfaced. According to Hunnic sources, the first violation was committed by the Romans themselves. A bishop from the city of Margus, where the treaty had been signed, reportedly raided and desecrated Hunnic graves on the northern bank of the Danube. For the Huns, this was a grievous insult. Attila, now growing in stature as a leader, demanded that the Romans hand over the bishop responsible for the offense. When the Roman authorities refused, Attila seized the opportunity to respond with force. Attila and Bleda led their forces into Roman territory, sacking cities, burning villages, and capturing thousands of Roman citizens. The Eastern Roman Empire, despite its military resources, struggled to contain the Hunnic onslaught. The Roman Emperor Theodosius, faced with the collapse of the Treaty of Margus, declared the agreement void and mobilized his armies to confront the Huns. Despite his efforts, Attila and Bleda responded with overwhelming force. They launched a full-scale invasion, devastating Roman cities as they advanced. Their campaign brought them within 20 miles of Constantinople, striking fear into the heart of the Eastern Roman Empire. One of their most notorious acts was the destruction of Naissus, the birthplace of Emperor Constantine the Great. The city was so thoroughly razed that it would not be rebuilt for over a century. Realizing the severity of his defeat, but unwilling to surrender entirely, Theodosius sought peace. The terms Attila and Bleda imposed were severe. The tribute Rome had been paying was more than tripled. For a time, these demands were met, and the Huns withdrew back into their own lands. However, during this period, Bleda disappeared from the historical record. Some scholars speculate that he may have been killed during a military campaign, though the exact circumstances of his death remain uncertain. By 445 AD, Attila emerged as the sole ruler of the Huns, consolidating power and becoming the most formidable military commander in Europe. In 450, Attila shifted his ambitions westward, announcing plans to attack the Visigothic kingdom of Toulouse, with an alliance in mind from Emperor Valentinian III. Up to this point, Attila had maintained relatively good relations with the Western Roman Empire, aided by the influence of the powerful Roman general Flavius Aetius. But things took a sudden turn when Valentinian's sister, Honoria, seeking to escape an unwanted betrothal to a Roman senator, sent Attila a plea for help. Along with her message, she sent an engagement ring, likely intended as a token of desperation. However, Attila interpreted her gesture as a marriage proposal and immediately seized the opportunity. He declared that he accepted Honoria's offer of marriage and demanded half of the Western Roman Empire as her dowry. Valentinian was furious when he learned of his sister's actions. Honoria's reckless plea had invited the wrath of the most feared man in Europe. It was only through the intervention of their mother Galla Placidia that Honoria was spared execution. Instead, Valentinian exiled her from court, but the damage had already been done. Attila, however, refused to back down. He sent a formal envoy to Ravenna, the Western Roman capital, proclaiming that the marriage proposal was legitimate and that he would come to claim what was rightfully his. With his demands ignored, Attila wasted no time in preparing for war. He summoned his vassal tribes, Gepids, Ostrogoths, Rugians, Syrians, Heriols, Thuringians, Alans, Burgundians, and others, forming one of the largest armies Europe had ever seen. By 451, he had assembled a force likely numbering around 200,000 men, although some sources claim the Hunnic army was even larger, perhaps as many as 500,000 strong. Attila began his campaign by invading the Roman province of Gallia Belgica, modern-day Belgium. The region fell swiftly to the Hunnic onslaught, its defenses overwhelmed. From there, Attila and his forces ravaged the land, leaving a path of destruction in their wake. As word of Attila's invasion spread, panic gripped the Western Roman Empire. Cities across Gaul prepared for the worst as Attila continued his relentless march, plundering and burning everything in his path. His reputation as a Scourge of God had spread like wildfire, and many feared that no one could stop him. However, one man was determined to halt Attila's advance, the Roman general Flavius Aetius. Understanding the gravity of the threat, Aetius forged an alliance with the Visigothic king, Theodoric I. The combined Roman and Visigothic armies represented one of the last great defenses against the Hunnic horde. Under Aetius's command, the alliance moved to intercept Attila before he could reach deeper into Gaul. On June 20, 451 AD, the armies met on the fields of Catalaunian Plains. It was one of the largest battles ever fought in late antiquity, with tens of thousands of warriors on both sides. Attila's cavalry, famous for their speed and deadly archery, struck first. They launched wave after wave of attacks, attempting to break the Roman and Visigoth lines. But the Allied forces held firm, repelling each assault with determination and discipline. Amidst the carnage, King Theodoric, one of the key leaders of the Allied forces, was killed. Some accounts say he fell from his horse, trampled by his own men, while others claim he was struck by a Hunnic spear. His death was a devastating blow to the Visigoths, but his son Thorismund quickly rallied the troops, taking command and continuing the fight. With their king fallen, the Visigoths fought with even greater fury, determined to avenge Theodoric's death. Under Thorismund's leadership, they launched a fierce counterattack, driving deep into the heart of Attila's forces. By the end of the day, the battlefield was littered with the dead, and Attila's army, though not entirely defeated, was forced to withdraw. His great gamble in Gaul had failed. Finally, Attila had been stopped. Though Attila had been stopped in Gaul, he was far from defeated. The Romans celebrated their claimed victory, hoping that the Huns would turn their attention elsewhere. But in 452 AD, Attila returned, this time invading Italy to claim the bride he believed had promised him her hand, Honoria. Once again, Attila's forces carved a path of destruction. Aquileia was not just sacked, it was erased. The destruction was so total that, in the years to come, no one would know where the city had once stood. The Huns left behind nothing but ash and terror as they continued their march through Italy. The people of Italy, hearing of Aquileia's fate, fled their homes in fear. Whole populations abandoned their towns and villages, seeking safety in remote regions. Many escaped to the marshes of the Venetian lagoon, where they would establish settlements that would later grow into the famed city of Venice. Venice, the city of bridges, was born out of the terror of Attila's invasion. Attila continued his advance, but he stopped at the Po River just before reaching key cities like Rome. The reasons for this abrupt halt are unclear and have been debated by historians. Italy had been ravaged by famine for 2 years, and it's possible that the Huns had run out of supplies. Some historians also suggest that disease, perhaps plague, had begun to spread through Attila's army, forcing him to abandon his plans for further conquest. Whatever the reason, the Hunnic advance ended abruptly. Attila, for the first time in his career, halted his campaign without fully achieving his objectives. Attila's retreat marked the end of his invasion of Italy, but the scars left by the Huns would last for years to come. The mighty conqueror had ravaged the heart of the Roman world once again, yet the eternal city was spared. After his invasion of Italy, Attila returned to his stronghold in the Hungarian Plains. In 453 AD, the aging warlord celebrated his latest marriage to a young Gothic princess named Ildiko. The morning after the wedding, he was found dead in bed beside his young wife. The entire army fell into intense grief over the loss of their leader. Legend has it that his burial took place in a secret location, possibly at the bottom of a river, which was diverted for the occasion. To ensure the secrecy of his final resting place, all those who participated in the burial were killed. To this day, the grave of Attila has never been found. With Attila's death, the Hunnic Empire began to unravel. His sons, fighting amongst themselves for control, failed to hold together the vast network of tribes that Attila had united. By 469 AD, only 16 years after Attila's death, the empire was gone.